If you're a shorter player, sometimes it can feel like a curse. It can be frustrating to play against bigger defenders, but there's an art and a science to still scoring on them, creating advantages, and doing your thing. So in this breakdown, we'll study some of the best smaller guards out there and how they take their height out of the equation or even use it to their advantage. And this goes for everything from scoring on bigs, when you may get a switch, down to players who are just taller than you and looking to use their length to throw your offensive game off. Let's get it. So first off, we got to take a look at the goal of every off-the-bounce possession, and it's pretty simple. First, we're looking to create an advantage. In other words, to get a step on the defender like this. Then we need to keep that advantage, not let them recover or push us off our line. And then we got to finish the advantage, actually put the ball in the basket, or maybe make a dump-off pass to somebody who also scores. And you may be thinking, well, that only applies to drives to the rim, and you're right. But we'll get to that later. So first off, let's talk about creating this advantage, which is the easiest of all of these on bigger players because usually you're a bit quicker and lower to the ground. But for the sake of this, let's assume that you don't have a quickness advantage. What can you do to get by defenders who may be a bit or a lot bigger? First off, use your surroundings. Take advantage of the fact that there's chaos going on around you in a game and that defenders are often easily distracted. One thing you'll notice is how frequently these guys use their eyes and orientation of their body to divert the defender's attention that direction and then go from there. Like here, beating Drew Holiday off the dribble in a playoff game is no easy task, but McConnell uses a pass fake and then looking towards the threat of this screen to get him looking even just a bit in that opposite direction, and then boom, he has his advantage. So whether it's really being an actor, getting defenders distracted by screens, and then exploding unpredictably from there, maybe acting like you're going to make a post entry and then crossing back the other way, which is pretty creative, potentially using a fake handoff, or even using their teammates as screens on your drives where you may not have as big of an advantage as you'd like and want to free yourself up more. Using your surroundings is a great way to get that initial step on defenders without having to go deep into the bag with dribble moves. Another technique to get by them here is getting up in their frame a bit. Many times with bigger players, we avoid getting close to them because we know they have the length to poke at the ball. But oftentimes, if you're able to protect the ball by positioning it away and having it on a string when they do reach, being close to them is valuable because one, now you're already halfway by them, and two, they feel like they can steal it and will oftentimes get their weight on their toes, allowing you to go by a bit easier. Other times, timing can be the key separator. Especially with bigs, if you're able to explode off the dribble with unorthodox timings, like when the ball is on the way down or on the way up, it's tough for them. They don't defend as many guards, especially smaller guards, so they don't have as many anticipation reps under their belt, making it super tough to adjust to off-time moves and accelerations. And lastly here, if you're able to get their momentum forwards, you're in a really good place to get this first step. Bigger players are often over-aggressive and tend to be leaning forwards with the hopes of getting a block on a jumper, so using hezzies or even just a bit of a backward separation or step is huge here. Think about it this way. In a situation like this where you want to get by them, your goal here is to get their weight more on their toes to start that, and then use that to create an advantage. But obviously you got to be able to knock this down at a solid clip to do that. Now, other times you don't necessarily need to create an advantage. You just need the defender so worried about you doing so that you can get a comfortable jumper off. One of the most common ways to do this is using downhill momentum to get them on their heels and taking advantage of their fear of you driving. Watch how these guys attack crazy hard downhill, get their bigger defender moving backwards, and then quickly pop up for the jumper. They also have longer strides, so if you're able to keep the ball within that range of control and also be able to quickly pop off the ground, it's often tough for them to stop and elevate as quickly as you. And sometimes this doesn't need to be them fully flipping their hips. It can even just be like this, using a basic setup to have them thinking you're going to attack downhill and pulling from there. And just like that first step, timing is very important on jumpers too. Watch how all these guys are pulling it with a bit of an unorthodox pickup timing, causing just a bit more of a delay than usual on the contest. That's something we talk about here. Gosh, I'll be here, and then as it's on the way down, they're like, nah, he's not about to shoot it when it's on the way down, and then you pull it from there. Oh, that's a fucking air ball, but you can't get to it.
If you wanted to on that. You see that? You don't know what I'm putting. You see that? Yeah, that probably could be a pool. That could be a pool. That could be a pool. That could be a pool.
הרפר מרים את הזריקה, דקה האחרונה של רבע ראשון. הרפר, לשלום, הרפר.
And lastly, if you're able to really elevate on your jumpers, this always helps too. Even if it's not crazy exaggerated, it's an incredible tool to have. So first off, let's start in the paint area, getting as high as I possibly can and working on shooting later in my jump to get comfortable finding power and control without the normal energy transfer from the bottom of that chain. Now, keep in mind that the physical qualities here are just as important, like the ankle stiffness here to pop off the ground and elevate. Although it's not necessary to get 40 inches off the ground, the more you're able to comfortably kind of float off the ground through training like this, the better. Then I go with high speed shots moving forward, so really pushing it out and getting as high as I can from 3-point range. I'd say start with what feels more comfortable to you. Like for me, left right is easier, so this is helping me get the feel for elevating to my highest and still getting power on it. If you airball a bunch at first, it. Next progression here is a lateral escape, which gives you less momentum towards the basket, so it's a bit tougher, but mix it up between float dribbles and pounds into the shot to help you develop a feel here. And then the last progression is from stationary, where clearly you don't have momentum into it, but if you can get here where you can elevate off of a standstill and shoot over defenders this way, this is where it really gets dangerous. And you can see here why the mid-range is so important when scoring on bigger defenders. They're often playing for a 3 or a block at the rim, and being able to stop unpredictably in this area is huge. Now, next is keeping the advantage we create, which can be difficult because bigger players are constantly looking to bump you off your line. So here are a few keys. First off, and maybe most important, is physicality. Obviously, most times smaller players will struggle with these bumps from bigger defenders, and the best way to neutralize this is to be the one to initiate that. Whoever hits first will probably win this contact battle. And as a smaller player with a lower center of mass, once you get an advantage, you're going to have to be physical most times. Then after the bump, timing is huge here. Since they often have so much range, there's only a split-second window to really have enough of an advantage to get a comfortable shot off. So notice how all these guys are getting into that shot right out of the bump, like literally the next step. Also in terms of keeping the advantage, using this float and stride to watch how that ball is kind of just spinning in their hands allows them to comfortably sprint and use their speed. And this is a great tool to have. And this brings me to angles. After you create this advantage, your goal, especially when they're leaning on you like this, should be to kind of slip in front of them. Sometimes with smaller defenders, this is a bit tougher like you see here. But if you get good at taking these tight angles around bigger defenders and building on that advantage you have, it can help big time. But this doesn't mean rushing. Getting comfortable and controlled at high speeds is vital, but a lot of players get sped up more than they need to, and composure is one of the biggest keys to scoring against bigger defenders. And lastly is finishing the advantage, which is clearly the most difficult part against big defenders. Now, keep in mind, it's much easier to finish when you have a bigger advantage. So if you're able to fully get in front using those keys we talked about earlier, life gets easier. But that's not always the case. And the first key here is unpredictability and timing on finishes. You cannot be telegraphing your finishes in these situations. And you'll see guys like TJ McConnell throw off their timing a bit, but also not even peek at the rim until the last second to avoid telegraphing it. And this could also be keeping the dribble alive until you feel like it's the right timing to get off a comfortable finish. Secondly, it sounds obvious, but I don't see it nearly enough, and it's just getting bigger players in the air with fakes. This is super low-hanging fruit. Once again, they want to block you. They're going to be aggressive. And if you're able to get an advantage, make them feel behind, and then fake, chances are they're going to go flying.
Over, shorts, gets inside the pump.
Other times, if you have a little bit bigger of an advantage, being able to keep your momentum going at a high speed like this to get the ball up in the air quickly and out of reach from the contest is another great option. This definitely takes elite touch, but is very doable. And lastly, of course, is getting great at floaters for both the first and third layers of the defense. The first layer is something like this, where you have an initial defender, the first layer, on your hip, and you quickly and unpredictably get it up into the air. You honestly don't need much of an advantage here if it's timed right, and is a great option if you're still struggling for that advantage. Now, on the third layer is on the deeper help defense. If you do get an advantage and this bigger defender steps up, stopping in your tracks to avoid an overzealous lay on them is a pretty good option. And obviously there are hundreds and hundreds more techniques that we could talk about for finishing, but these are some really relevant ones for scoring on bigger defenders. Then the last thing I want to touch on is just getting off the rock a bit and playing more efficiently off ball. If you're able to get easy buckets on cuts, find simple spot up threes, lose your defender off ball and get open, and space the floor to create long closeouts, you don't even have to deal with much of this every play. You get primarily easy buckets, create some momentum, and now all of what we talked about is that much easier. So go apply these things, try them out when you're hooping, work on them, and I bet you guys will see some really good results. Let me know what you want to see next in the comments. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. Till next time.